Hey, welcome back to part two of the solar inverter battery upgrade for the 2021 Winnebago Voyage fifth wheel you see behind me. Part one was the installation of the batteries and the prepping of the battery box. Part two, we will do the install of the inverter, the progressive surge protector, and the AC cabling in between. And then in a later video, we'll do the solar. Let me show you what we got so far. In part one, we installed these two 170 amp hour batteries from bigbattery.com, and then a shut-off switch where we can select either to run on one battery or the other or both. And then the power comes out of there and goes to the positive DC bus bar, and also goes to a second disconnect switch, which goes to a fuse block, which will then go to the inverter, which is going to mount on this wall section right here. On this side, the negative comes out of the battery, goes through that shunt, which will go to the battery monitor, which will mount indoors, and then it comes out of there and goes to the DC bus bar. And then on this wall to the right is where the solar MPPT charge controller is going to mount. And so that's what happened in part one. Now here in part two, we're going to install our GoPower IC3000 inverter, charger, transfer switch. The great thing about the GoPowers is that, unlike some of the other models on the market, it'll pass through both hot legs on a 50 amp service, and switch both hot legs on a 50 amp service, and feed both hot legs on a 50 amp service from the inverter. So power in and out is here, and then the battery connects here, and we have 4-aught cable run to go to the battery side. And then the other part of the installation is a Progressive Industries electrical management system with smart surge protection. That's going to mount up underneath where the shore power comes into the unit, and then we'll run 6-3 cable from this back to this, and then from this back up to the circuit breaker panel and the fifth wheel. So that's part two, and I'm getting a really late start today. So are we going to get this all done? I don't know, because that is full of stuff, and then I have to take the basement apart to get to where the surge protector is going to go and where I can tie into the AC. So stay tuned. Let's see what happens next. All right, well, we're about done for today. I'm running out of steam. I didn't quite get finished, but we did get wires, the 6 AWG 6.3 run from the inverter up to where it connects to shore power, and also installed the progressive surge protector. So the surge protector is fully installed except for the remote, which we will do later. And then the second wire that comes back from the inverter spliced in to the wires going to the distribution panel, rather than run new wires all the way. If you've never used these things, by the way, these are great. These are Morris inline splice connectors. You can get them in different sizes. This one goes from number 2 to number 14 wire. They're pre-filled with electrical compound to help make them stay non-corrosive, and then they have little plugs that go on the top to seal them, and they work great. So I would highly recommend those to you, unless you want to try to snake your way up in there somewhere, and I wasn't up for that, and I didn't buy that much 6.3 anyway. So that's a good way to go. Some people will tell you shouldn't have a splice in it, but there's no reason not to when you use a quality splice. It's not like you're using wire nuts or some crazy thing like that. Okay, so surge protector installed. Cables run back and forth from the inverter installed. And let me pause this for a second. I'll go show you at the inverter. So, but before I show you the inverter, I want to show you just how much you have to take apart everything. That's what it looks like in the basement area of these Winnebago Voyages. This mess is not just a Winnebago thing. Pretty much everybody does these the same way, but you end up with a lot of space really to work on inside the basement, and plenty of room to put stuff. You know, some guys actually have stuffed the batteries and the inverter and all that into this space, and that's possible in that area over there. I should also mention the original converter, which is the battery charger that comes stock, is over in that corner, and I didn't take it out, but I did disconnect it and unplug it so that it won't try to charge the lithium batteries. But I left it in place just in case someday we decide to go backwards to what it used to be before I started doing stuff. So here we go, back in the battery compartment. This is almost done. The AC is done and run and connected, and the GoPower IC3000 is mounted, but I still need to do the DC wires, and I'm just out of juice for today. So tomorrow we should be able to finish this part 2 of this project up, and then next will be solar controller and solar panels. Stay tuned. Well, it's the end of day 2, phase 2 for the upgrade for the Winnebago Voyager, and I got so excited today to get this done that I just didn't stop and take any pictures or shoot little videos, and so you're just going to have to see what it looks like when it's all done. Let me give you a look. So my lovely assistant has already put everything back in here, so not a lot to see. I would just say the progressive surge protector is mounted back in there somewhere, and I was going to put the remote for that inside where the other controls are, and then decided today that I'm just going to put it right here. It doesn't look that flickery in person. That's got something to do with the camera and LEDs, I don't know. But there's where the 50 amp shore plower connects, and so I mounted it right above my wet bay in a quiet, dry spot. And so as soon as I plug in, you know, I'm right here, and I can see voltage line 1, line 2, amps line 1, line 2, and if there's any faults. And so I'm liking this. I think I'm just going to leave it right there, and it fits right there pretty well, and the compartment closes, and there she goes. Okay, so in here I finished the last of the cables. I made this positive cable to go from the fuse block to the inverter, and then installed that cable and the negative cable, which I'd already made, which is behind. And what else did I do? I ran the ground from the GoPower down to the ground bus, and I ran a power wire for the shunt over to the DC positive bus on a fused spot. And then I decided, well, let's see if this thing works, and so I fired it up, and I'll be darned if it doesn't work perfect. My batteries were mostly discharged, so I have it, the GoPower's capable of 125 amps of charge current, but you can also tell it how much power that you have, and it won't draw more than that. So in this case, I'm actually plugged into a 14 gauge 120 volt power cord, extension cord, going back over to the house. And so I told the GoPower, don't take more than 10 amps from shore power. So because it's only taking 10 amps from shore power, it's charging at 63, 64 amps into the 2 GoPower big batteries. And so it's going to take it a while to get up to full charge, but this is all working fine. You have to go through and set it up to work with lithium batteries. So it's curious that the inverter charger, the IC series, they haven't updated that to include a lithium profile, but they have a custom one. And so what you do is you just go to your battery specs and see this likes to charge at up to a max of 14.6, and then the maximum charge current I think is 125 amps. And this only put out 125 combined, so they're never going to get more than about 60, 62 amps a piece if we're on like a 30 or 50 amp service. So that's all within specs. And then the custom setup for the charging profile, then you just tell it don't ever do an equalize, and you're good to go. And so right now the batteries are in a float stage. They're at 13.6 volts, and we're charging at about 63.8 amps. And the battery monitor, I haven't calibrated that yet because, again, these are just sitting here for now. and eventually they're going to get mounted inside where the other controls are. This one has not been calibrated yet, so it doesn't know how big the batteries are and or any of that, or what percent charge they are. So the way these work is, the easiest way to do it is you bring your batteries up to full charge until the BMS shuts them off, and then you tell this what size your battery bank is. In this case, it'd be 340 amp hours, and then you press the button to tell it you're at 100%, and then that calibrates it, and then from then on it'll know what percent your battery is, and it gives you your rate of discharge or charge. This shows about 62, 64, 65 amps going in. See the plus sign. If we were drawing power out of the batteries, that would be a minus sign instead of a plus sign. So everything is working just exactly the way I had hoped it would. The hardest part of this job may be snaking this wire through the basement and then up to where the control panel is inside the unit. I'm going to have to take that basement all apart again to do that. But for today, quick review. 270 amp hour batteries from BigBattery.com. They have Anderson connectors on the output. Can I get a view of that? Not very well, but they're down there. And then we've got a disconnect switch with a batteries from Marlin, and I can choose to run battery 1 or battery 2 or both batteries, just in case I want to isolate one or charge one quickly or something. And then out of there, power goes over to the positive bus bar and goes to the whole camper, and then a large wire comes out of that and goes over to a second disconnect switch, which is the inverter disconnect, so I can isolate the inverter from the system on the DC side if I want to. That goes to up to a 400 amp fuse, which I bought from GoPower, and that was the size they recommended based on the cable and the battery and the inverter size that I have. And then the DC connects right there on the side, and then the AC comes in and out up there in the corner, and that goes up to the other part of the basement where the on one side the surge protector is, and the other side goes to the panel. And so there we go. That's the install. Yes, the GoPower looks like it's upside down. The book says there's a picture you can put it in a couple of different ways, and one of the ways that it says you can put it in is with the terminals on the left. That's what the picture says, but unfortunately that puts the little GoPower upside down, but we're just going to pretend we didn't see that. So there we go. Part 2 of the solar is done. The batteries are charging. I unplugged the AC and ran the microwave for a couple of minutes, and that all worked fine. So I think we're in pretty good shape. Next will be either to run those remotes up to where they're going to go, or we're going to work on the solar next. So the charge controller is going to go in there, and well, you know where the solar goes. It's up there somewhere. I have a plan for that. We'll see. All right, well, thanks for watching. Hope you learned a little something. If you got any questions, shoot them over to me, and I'll be trying to answer them as best I can. I'm not like the most perfect person in the world as far as this stuff goes, but I do know a little bit. So, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you in the next stage of the project. Bye-bye.